For this first self assessment, I feel like I know what God wants for my life at this particular time. I feel like I'm in the center of it. It feels very sweet, and I'm very grateful for it. As I read through the call, it was all very familiar territory. It was soothing to me and well written and excellent to hear and, prodded my mind and heart. But none of this is a difficult thing for me at the moment. For most of my life, I had no clue what God wanted me to be, what He had tasked me for, and I lived my life for Him. I've lived my life for Him all my life since I can remember, but I knew there was something else He had called me for, and over the last number of years, He called me to pastor His people and led me and my wife here to Brookville Bible Church in Boston, and I really feel in the sweet spot of what He has called us to do. One of the things I've noticed in the last few weeks in the posts is that there seems to be a prejudice against leadership conferences and the culture of pushing leadership as something to strive for in the church. And the thinking there is that it looks too much like the corporate world. We're borrowing too much from the corporate world, and so that's probably bad. And it's all about showmanship. It's all about numbers and things like that are not at all what Jesus was going for. But it worries me because I think leadership is so important, but I think the key is if we understand that leadership in the church or in the corporate world, in any organization, leadership by a Christ follower is about humility. It's about self-abasement, really. It's about living out Philippians 2, emptying himself of all but love, as the hymn says. It's about washing the disciples' feet. It's about the God of the universe making Himself the lowliest among us. If we understand that that's what leadership is about, if you're a Christian, about humility and about authentic discipleship, then I think that takes the worry out of going to leadership conferences and learning from one another, even learning from the secular world. And I just think we ought to be very careful about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Oz talked about the need for heroes, and I think that's what God's calling when He calls leaders to stand up and lead people from A to B, lead people from here to there. In another book, I Am a Follower by Len Sweet, that some of us were reading this week, he talks about celebrities in the leadership, especially the church leadership world, and we're not going for that celebrity status, that glitz, that name recognition, any of that. The Asa's hero, as I read it, is more of making the tough calls, standing up when no one else will, taking those great big leaps of faith, like in the Hall of Faith in Hebrews 11, having our eyes fixed on Jesus. And that's really what I drew out of the call more than anything else, is a reminder to just focus on Him, to keep it simple, stupid. Just focus on Jesus. And so many of the other problems in leadership and in life just sort of slough off whenever we fix our eyes on Jesus. Also not struggling with being authentic as a leader, as a dad and husband and stuff, as a Christian. I'm not struggling with that personally. What I'm really struggling with is how do I affect that in other people's lives, in the lives of our churchgoers who are stuck in ruts and thinking of following Christ in only one sort of category. How do I affect that authenticity through and through in them? And that's what is really exciting me, because New England is such a lost place. It's an unreached people group if there ever was. And my heart is to see the people in New England who are very far from God, who will never even think of Him, who might have pain and trauma with the church, since this is a very heavily Catholic area. My heart is to see them have relationships with Jesus, sold out Jesus followers, and through that find their way back to God and then the church at some point, but find Jesus as He really is, not as He's been painted by church and culture. The attractional model church is what I was raised up in. Basically, it's not bad. It's basically you invite your one to the Sunday gathering, and that's what it's really all about. So that's why you do that so well, because you want them to know Jesus. What I'm really passionate about, especially in a post-Christian context like New England, I think really what we need to do is flip that around, where we're going to them, just like the Great Commission, just like Jesus said, go. Where we're going out of them, we're getting out of the church and we're doing things out in the community, mainly just to build relationships with them so that they can see Jesus in us, be attracted to him through our lives, and come to Jesus in that way. I know God will be working on me in the near future is my prayer life. I It's not that I don't pray. I spend a nice amount of time with my wife every morning in prayer as we do devotions, and I'm bantering with God throughout the day. I do spot prayers whenever I think of something, But I think God's been working on me to develop a more structured prayer life as well. Uh, that that structured prayer life that I used to do at one time, where I'm literally down on my knees in a prayer closet, like in the movie War Room, and I have my lists, not in a boring way, but my lists I'm praying through and being very thorough about it, that sort of thing. As I look through crafting uh, your rule of life, I have so much trouble with the number seven, and the reason I have so much trouble with number seven is in my own household, just my family, not extended family. I have 9 people, so I'm thinking I'm already at 10. 9 in my family, and then one key person at church. Maybe I'm just thinking about this wrong, and somebody could help me. I discovered this last week, kind of by accident, that I can do seminary work while exercising. We have a treadmill at the house, and I set it up in the basement, and I set up a board I can put my book or computer on. And I'm not very coordinated, but reasonably speaking, I can get some seminary work done and even church work while walking on a treadmill and being healthy and fulfilling that part of my plan for these next 3 years in the doctorate. The question was asked, what do you need from God in order to move forward? If I were just going to answer that question in sort of a childlike innocence, I'd say, I just want to see God's clear and explosive blessing in our work here. I want to see my Brookvillers. I want to see them on fire for the mission, owned by the Holy Spirit, salivating to do the work, and a volunteerism surge here at Brookville, because people are finally catching the picture of what God is doing uniquely through this candlestick here in Holbrook. I'm very excited about what God's going to be doing in my life and our lives together, as he draws us closer into an understanding of his will, and into, more basically, just an understanding, a picture of him in his presence as we work through this doctorate.